Hey, I just saw a flash on the lunar surface.
Where?
Somewhere north of Grimaldi. Can you check if anything shows up on your seismometers? Maybe a small impact that would produce some light.
Okay, we'll check.
A small bright flash right there.
Dante's first circle of hell is limbo. Eternal waiting. Eternal emptiness. Eternal nothingness. The torment of being denied the presence of God. And such a place actually exists. While all the historical figures we know lived and died on earth, while endless wars raged, natural disasters struck, all major historical events unfolded, every possible book was written, and every possible movie was filmed. Nothing was happening on the moon. Just imagine a place of total emptiness for 2 billion years. Absolute void. The occasional meteorite rarely strikes the surface, and even those impacts are completely silent. It is not just quiet here. Sound itself does not exist. And then, after 2 billion years, an object approaches the moon. A 4-legged truncated pyramid slowly descends toward the surface and hovers a few meters above it. The spacecraft glides parallel to the ground, searching for a landing spot. The engine blast scatters lunar dust in all directions. Dust that had been settling in this very spot for millions of years. Then the object gently touches the surface. For the first time in all of existence, this place has been disturbed. The Eagle has landed. That was the signal Armstrong sent back to Earth. And back there, absolute euphoria erupted. Total ecstasy in mission control, everyone jumping out of their seats with joy. That was how man first set foot on another celestial body. You know the rest? Armstrong takes one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. The American flag, the UN flag, over 100 flags of other nations. For some reason, people often forget about that. The phone call with the president, then the journey back, and worldwide euphoria. In countless interviews, the astronauts shared how they felt and what they saw. And by all accounts, they saw more than they could explain. This is a NASA document published in July 1968, a year before Armstrong's first step on the moon. A document titled A Chronological Catalogue of Reported Lunar Events. What kind of lunar events? It compiles all verified reports from astronomers regarding temporary changes in the moon's appearance over the past 427 years. It lists observation dates, locations on the moon, duration, descriptions, observers, and sources. It included reports of temporary bright spots, as well as blurs, darkenings, and brightenings of crater floors and other small areas. 68 pages in total, more than 4 centuries of observations of strange phenomena on Earth's satellite. Here are just a few of them. December 7th, 1857. The Tenerife Mountains near Plato Crater. Duration, 5 hours. 2 luminous fiery spots on the illuminated side of the moon. To quote the observer, a phenomenon which I have never before seen on the surface of the moon, although I have frequently observed it for the last 40 years. From the brightness of the light and contrast of color, it appeared to me like 2 active volcanoes or 2 vents of one volcano in action, 1668. A bright, star-like point. It was witnessed by several residents of New England at once. October 22nd, 1790. During a total eclipse, Herschel observed at least 150 small, round, bright red luminous points. February 2nd, 1887. An intense yellow streak that cast shadows on adjacent details of the lunar surface. May 24th, 1955. A flash resembling an electrical discharge. November 4th, 1964. A peak on the western wall was remarkably bright and white. At the base of the peak, on the inside, there was a strong blue streak. Immediately adjacent to the southeast was a small, bright red spot. A total of 579 observations. Remarkably, different luminous phenomena were often observed in different centuries at the exact same points on the moon, and perhaps the most prominent of these points is Aristarchus crater. Luminous phenomena on the dark side of the moon, bright spots on the dark side, blinking lights, a blend of various colors in tiny spots, flickering bands, streaks of light. For centuries, humanity has been aware of this anomaly zone. Moreover, strange reports regarding the zone began reaching NASA right during the Apollo 11 flight. There was a network of ground-based observers monitoring the moon throughout the Apollo program. Over the course of 2 days, July 17th and 18th, they detected 6 strange glows inside Aristarchus crater. 4 of them were independently confirmed by different observers on Earth. On July 19, 1969, at 1830, as the Apollo 11 crew was preparing for the descent to the lunar surface, Mission Control passed along a request. An observation which you might make if you have the time. There are reports of some transient lunar phenomena in the vicinity of Aristarchus. And the crew responded to the request. Yeah, Houston, I'm looking north toward Aristarchus now, and there's an area that is considerably more illuminated than the surrounding area. It seems to have a slight amount of fluorescence to it. A crater can be seen, and the area around it is quite bright. Neil Armstrong, while in lunar orbit, confirms it firsthand. The glow is there. TLP stands for Transient Lunar Phenomena. The term was first used in that very 1968 catalog of lunar events. Winifred Cameron, a NASA researcher, spent long years collecting TLP reports. In the 1977 paper, Cameron writes that she analyzed over 1,400 observations, cataloged them, grouped them by potential causes, and came to no definitive conclusions as to why the moon occasionally glows in different colors. And if these are due to natural causes, why don't we see anything similar on other planets and their satellites? Fascinatingly, about 70% of these observations occurred in the exact same 12 spots on the lunar surface. 12 anomaly zones where people have seen something strange for centuries. Zone 12, Tycho crater, named after the Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe. Diameter, 85 kilometers. At the center lies the Tycho Peak. Observations, December 6, 1940. Some luminosity on the western rim of the crater. July 14, 1940. A faint milky luminosity, irregular glowing marks in the shadow. Zone 11, Posidonius crater, an ancient impact crater named after the ancient Greek philosopher. Diameter, 95 kilometers. Observations, April 7th, 1821. The crater cast no shadow. April 24th, 1955. A brief white flash north of the Mare Serenitatis, Sea of Serenity, near Posidonius. And by the way, we even raced cars on the lunar surface. On November the 17th, 1970, Lunokhod 1 was delivered to the moon, the first remote-controlled rover in history. Over 10 months, it traveled roughly 10 kilometers and transmitted about 25,000 images back to Earth, controlled remotely from the ground. The Americans, however, had actual lunar cars. Astronauts drove across the surface in specially designed vehicles. The Lunar Roving Vehicle, or the Moon Buggy, was developed, by the way, by Boeing. It was a two-seater vehicle, a coupe, technically, which the Americans left on the moon after use. In fact, right now, 3 ownerless cars are gathering dust up there. The maximum speed of the lunar rover was 18 kilometers per hour, which felt pretty fast for the astronauts. The rover also broke down a few times right there on site, forcing the astronauts to fix it themselves using whatever tools they had on hand. On May 8th, 2026, a dedicated section titled UFO appeared on the website of the United States Department of Defense, or the Department of War, as it is now being called. The War Department is publishing files on unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, as part of an effort to ensure historical transparency. The materials archived here are unresolved cases. This means the government cannot make a final determination on the nature of the observed phenomena. This can happen for various reasons, including a lack of data. And the Department of War welcomes private sector analysis, information, and expertise. Well, sounds like an invitation for people like us. So, the Department of Defense, I'll stick to the old name, I don't like the new one, releases its first drop. It consists of 162 files, astronaut communication transcripts, FBI documents, declassified mission debriefs, witness testimonies, as well as photo and video materials capturing phenomena that NASA was never able to classify. Documents that absolutely no one has managed to definitively explain. Zone 10, Kepler Crater, a young, bright impact crater in the Oceanus Procellarum, Ocean of Storms. Observations, February 5th, 1884. A glow inside Kepler, February 7th, 1949. A white glow near Kepler, November 7th, 1954. A bright spot just past the eastern wall. Zone 9, Copernicus Crater, around 800 million years old with a diameter of 93 kilometers. Observations, March 30th, 1889. A black spot, October 29th, 1966. A red spot. One of the declassified documents on the Department of Defense website is a technical debrief of the Apollo 11 crew dated July 31st, 1969. Opening section 21. Visual observations on lunar orbit. After liftoff, we did notice and reported to the ground that the approach to CDH was a constant altitude delta. As the Earth rose above the lunar horizon, I observed what looked like a rather bright light source. We tentatively explained this as a possible laser. This seemed to be the best possible explanation until, returning in the command module and approaching Earth, we were able to observe something that had roughly the same appearance. When we brought the monocular to bear, the light source looked like a reflection of the sun off a relatively smooth body of water. A lake, for example. I think we revised our original conclusion regarding the source of this light we saw coming from Earth. Unless someone admits to aiming a laser toward the moon at that time, it was most likely a reflection from a lake. I still consider it an unusual phenomenon to see such a bright light source from that distance. It looks like it shouldn't have shown up on film at all. The Earth was just too bright. In addition to this testimony, there is the anomalous bright glow of the Aristarchus crater. You know, the moon truly possesses many, shall we say, oddities. oddities that conspiracy theorists actively use to their heart's content. They claim the moon is an artificial satellite, a giant spaceship, or even completely hollow inside. Such theories hold no water under scrutiny, but certain lunar anomalies have indeed plagued scientists for many years. First, the moon is suspiciously large. It simply shouldn't be. It is nearly a third of the size of Earth. Usually satellites are much smaller. Furthermore, the moon and its dimensions are one of the key reasons life emerged on Earth. The moon creates tides, stabilizes the tilt of Earth's axis, and influences life cycles. A bit too much of a fortunate coincidence. Scientists answer simply, it is indeed unusual, but all sorts of things happen in space. The second oddity, the moon is always facing us with the same side, as if on purpose. In reality, this is due to tidal locking. The Earth and the moon entered a rotational system where one rotation around its own axis equals one orbit around the Earth. I was told that the moon is gravitationally stabilized relative to Earth. The moon's center of pressure and center of mass are different points. So, the moon constantly precesses and aligns itself relative to the Earth. Conspiracy theorists are also deeply baffled by the fact that the near side of the moon looks nothing like its far side. Why is one side covered in dark spots while the other has none? Although, in reality, the same asymmetry is true for Earth. Another anomaly. The moon rings like a bell. The Americans left seismometers on the satellite to record moonquakes. Researchers were incredibly surprised to see how long the moon vibrated after meteorite impacts. Does that mean it might be hollow inside? But this was also explained. It is the result of a complete lack of moisture and atmosphere on the moon. The next oddity is another striking coincidence. Total solar eclipses are possible on Earth because the moon perfectly covers the sun. That is, the sun is 400 times larger than the moon and exactly 400 times farther away from Earth. Another astonishingly precise coincidence, but there is an explanation for this too. This is not some eternal, perfect state. The moon is moving away from the Earth at a rate of about 4 centimeters per year. In the past, it appeared much larger from Earth, so we are actually lucky to be able to witness such eclipses. Our descendants will no longer have this opportunity. As you can see, science today can explain almost all of these anomalies. Nevertheless, some mysteries still remain. Zone 8, the Cobra's Head area. Observations, November the 28th, 1963. A pink spot on the western side. Duration, 35 minutes. February 25th, 1964. Red flashes lasting for 3 minutes. Zone 7, Mare Crisium, Sea of Crises. Maria on the moon are the dark spots on its surface. This sea is about 4 billion years old. Observations, July 4th, 1832. Mare Crisium was speckled with small dots and streaks of light. April 10th, 1965. A star-like point of light. The entire Mare Crisium was crossed by bright streaks mixed with bright spots of light. On November 19th, 1969, the second crewed spacecraft, Apollo 12, landed on the moon. As the commander of the new expedition, Pete Conrad, stepped out of the lunar module, he said, "Man, that may have been a small one for Neil, but that's a long one for me," joking about the fact that he was shorter than Armstrong. This expedition spent over a day on the moon, 31 hours. Pete Conrad and Alan Bean were on the surface, while Richard Gordon remained in lunar orbit. The astronauts accomplished a lot of useful work back then. They walked over to an old American spacecraft that had been sitting on the moon for 2 years and collected 34 kilograms of lunar samples. And just a few hours before liftoff, Allen reports some strange glowing points to Houston. This is from the Apollo 12 flight transcript.
Listen, Houston.
Go ahead.
When you look through the ET,
This is a special optical telescope.
when you look through that into a dark square, you can see these lights. Light particles, flashes of light that seem to be coming from somewhere. In this case, I'm looking at square one, which is the left one. They are coming from behind me to my left and just taking off into space. I thought they were leaking from my water boiler, but it looks like some of these things are shooting out from the moon. They are leaving here real fast and just heading for the stars.
Yet, the ultimate mystery of Apollo 12 isn't the mission logs, it's the photos. Photographs of the lunar landscapes taken by the astronauts themselves on the surface. Bright dots are distinctly visible in them. There are 5 images in total that the Pentagon included in the release, stating they have no definitive answer as to what they are. At the Gus Grissom Memorial Complex in Indiana, a rather strange object is on display. A sandwich. More precisely, a corned beef sandwich. Actually, it's a replica. A replica of the sandwich that caused a massive scandal at NASA. On March 23, 1965, during the first American two-man space mission, Gus Grissom and John Young launched into space. Right in the middle of the flight, Young made a rather unexpected offer to his crewmate, Grissom. "Want a bite of a sandwich?" John had managed to smuggle a corned beef sandwich onto the spacecraft inside his spacesuit. Eating the sandwich was just a 2-minute break. It didn't even have mustard or a pickle. But a massive scandal erupted. In Congress, it was dubbed the $30 million sandwich. The fear was that if its crumbs floated into the wrong place under zero gravity, they could have caused severe problems for the entire mission. Young himself explained his action in a very down-to-earth way. Space food is simply tasteless, and you just get a craving for something real. By the way, here we are discussing the moon at length, but we haven't cleared up the most fundamental thing. A couple of months ago, I heard someone in my circle say yet again, the Americans never went to the moon. Let's settle this once and for all, quickly, clearly, and briefly. They went. Here is the proof. Lunar samples. The astronauts brought back 382 kilograms of lunar soil. It was analyzed by scientists from dozens of countries, including the USSR. Everyone confirmed the soil is from the moon. The astronauts left retroreflectors on the moon. To this day, people beam lasers there from Earth and detect the reflection. Photographic evidence. There are tons of photos of the landing sites. Virtually every country whose probes have reached the moon has photographed them. Radio signals coming from the moon were tracked live by astronomers all over the planet, including those in the USSR Soviet acknowledgement. The USSR officially confirmed the landing and congratulated the Americans on their achievement. A massive amount of photo and video material was brought back. Everything matches perfectly across the board. The position of the sun, the lighting, the terrain, and the starry sky. Seismometers were left on the moon, which recorded meteorite impacts. Hundreds of thousands of people participated in the program. Engineers, contractors, military personnel, communications operators, scientists, technicians, medical staff, astronomers, journalists, and foreign tracking stations. Did they all conspire? People love conspiracy theories, and they really dislike boring scientific data. Yet, an incredible amount of that data was gathered by the Apollo program. Zone 6, Ross Crater. A small crater in Mare Tranquillitatis, Sea of Tranquility, named after the British explorer James Ross. May 18, 1964. A white obscuration was moving at 20 miles per hour and decreasing in size. The phenomenon reoccurred on June 17, 1964, a moving bright spot. July 18th, a bright area was moving and shrinking, its size appearing larger when viewed through an amber filter. Zone 5, Gassendi Crater. July 10th, 1941, a moving luminous point. April the 12th, 1966, a sudden red flash that immediately turned into a spot of red haze near the northwestern wall. April 30th, 1966, red glows. There are 16 observations in the table, most of them involving unidentified red dots. And finally, Apollo 17, the last crew of astronauts in the Apollo project. No human has walked on the moon since then, at least not yet. And the Apollo 17 expedition is a gold mine for UAP enthusiasts. First, there is a photograph very similar to the previous ones, only taken 3 years later. 3 multicolored dots in the sky. Second, there is another mission debrief where the crew discusses unusual visual observations during their return to Earth. Evans noted,
After the fireball brilliance decreased, I was able to look back up out of the rendezvous window and see what to me looked like a tunnel with a bright spot in the middle of the tunnel. Way back down the tunnel, way back behind, I could see the fireball. On the trans-Earth coast portion, we only had a small crescent Earth, and it was impossible to make any extensive weather observations. We had light flashes practically continuously through the whole mission when our eyes were dark adapted. I had one that I thought was a flash on the lunar surface.
and of course, the flight transcripts.
We got several very bright particles, fragments, or something flying by while we're maneuvering. There's a lot of big colors down on my window, just bright. And out Ron's window, it looks like the 4th of July today. We can make out some of them by shape. They're irregular, angular fragments. They are tumbling. Very bright.
The transcript from December 10th. And probably the most spectacular one that I remember, and the last one I remember before going to sleep, was one that was a very bright spot that flashed right between my eyes. Like a real bright headlight, like a train coming at you, only with a flash. One thing's for sure, I don't have any doubt that they're out there. Last flight, I guess I just wasn't looking for them and wasn't paying attention to them. Maybe they were there and I ignored them for other things. But they are out there.
Hey, I just saw a flash on the lunar surface.
Where?
Somewhere north of Grimaldi. Can you check if anything shows up on your seismometers? Maybe a small impact that would produce some light.
Okay, we'll check.
A small bright flash right there.
Zone 4. Alphonsus Crater. An ancient crater. November 3rd, 1958. A reddish glow followed by an outgassing event. September 2nd, 1966. A series of faint glows. August 13th, 1967. A glow inside the crater. 18 observations in total. Zone 3. Schroeter's Valley. Vallis Schroeteri. July 3rd, 1955. A star-like point. November the 28th, 1963. Red spots followed by a violet-blue haze. 20 observations in the table. So, Apollo 11, 12, and 17 saw lights, photographed lights, and reported flashes. Let's break these down from the end. The Apollo 17 astronauts saw bright particles around the spacecraft. Here, researchers agree. This is debris, ice, insulation flakes, peeling fragments, and paint. In a vacuum, any venting of water, steam, condensation, life support exhaust, or even dust can instantly crystallize. When these hit the sunlight against the black backdrop of space, they truly look like little stars or bright points. But beyond that, the astronauts describe a far stranger phenomenon: flashes inside their eyes. At certain points, astronauts seeing these lights in space would close their eyes and continue to see them. How is that possible? As scientists explain, these are cosmic rays and heavy charged particles passing through the retina due to the intense radiation environment outside Earth. Even with closed eyes, a person continues to perceive bright flashes. Most of these light sightings in space are explained by this exact visual illusion, known as phosphenies. But if that is the case, what do we do about the photographs? The Pentagon did indeed place the photos under the Unresolved Cases section, but this isn't due to some deeply classified information about what is in the images. Rather, it is due to a simple lack of data. For example, all the Apollo 12 photos were taken around the same time, yet the lights are always different. This means it wasn't one specific object in space. Furthermore, the astronauts didn't report anything at the time. It is highly likely just a film or optical defect. What truly remains a mystery are those very TLPs, Transient Lunar Phenomena, that humanity has observed for centuries. The exact catalog of events in the anomaly zones that I've been reading to you, they are real. It is not entirely clear what causes them, but there are plenty of theories. Winifred Cameron, the NASA researcher who studied this issue, categorized the observed phenomena and identified several potential triggers. These phenomena can stem from completely different sources. Meteorite impacts. NASA constantly monitors the dark side of the moon, and meteorite strikes definitely cause visible flashes on the surface. Outgassing. In certain locations, emissions of volatile substances from beneath the crust have been observed. Remnants of the moon's ancient volcanism. This offers a viable explanation for why these effects are frequently seen in the exact same spots. Observation errors. Naturally, looking at such a distant object is quite difficult, and Earth's atmosphere gets in the way. Many reports coincided with moments when the sun rose at the exact same angle, making optical illusions highly probable. Every anomalous area has its own frequently observed repetitive phenomena. For instance, in the Gassendi crater, people specifically see red dots, likely because gas frequently escapes the crust there. In the Posidonius crater, unusual shadows are most commonly noticed, meaning it is almost certainly a play of light caused by the specific topography. Nevertheless, for now, these remain hypotheses. Armstrong did indeed witness a glow with his own eyes. He was questioned afterward about whether any color was visible and which specific crater wall was glowing. There was no color, and it was the inner wall. Armstrong was asked about this incident many times because it sounds intriguing, but he always answered calmly. It was simply a higher local level of surface illumination. We are talking about a natural phenomenon here, not an extraterrestrial civilization. Sorry to be a party pooper. Zone 2, Plato Crater, an ancient impact crater. There are 40 observations in the table. May 13th, 1870. Bright spots, an extraordinary sight. 1871. A streak of light across the crater floor, visible while the crater was in shadow. July 31st, 1904. A bright, hazy object 2 arcseconds in diameter on the crater floor. April 15th, 1932. The sudden appearance of a cloud-like white spot. Zone 1, Aristarchus crater, the primary target on the list of observed glows. 122 reports, making up about 30% of all observed phenomena. October 18th, 1824. A blend of various colors in tiny spots to the west and northwest of Aristarchus. February 19, 1905, a bright spot shining in the dark like a small star during an eclipse. On November the 26th, 1961, a red glow was visible. Anomalies were observed in the red and blue regions of the spectrum. You know, the whole thing is just strange. I don't mean the lights in space, but this website. Most of the materials on the Pentagon's Apollo website have actually been published before. The transcripts of all the communications have been in the public domain for a long time. There is even a dedicated website tracking absolutely everything. Where the astronauts were, voice logs, and the actual audio recordings of the chatter. There is even a multi-hour file of the communications recording on YouTube. The world had already seen a portion of the photos too. Why did the Pentagon put all of this out there again? Let's see what else is on there. Now let's look at the most interesting parts. For instance, in 2013, the United States Central Command submitted a report on an unidentified anomalous phenomena to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Turns out there is such a thing. The report consisted of a 1-minute and 46-second video captured by an infrared sensor aboard a US military platform. The reporting source provided no verbal or written description of the observation. Let's take a look. As you can see, all the data is redacted. What the object is remains completely unclear. It's described as an 8-pointed star, but it honestly looks like camera lens flare. And what bothers me most is, for example, the parachute. That looks just like a parachute. I mean, the whole thing looks... The infrared camera is filming, you can't see much, but there are the outlines of a parachute. It looks like a paraglider, or whatever they call it. Those kinds of things. And right here, you can clearly see a paraglider flying. It's just that the camera seems to be upside down. Alright, moving on. A 50-second video recording made by an infrared sensor aboard a US military platform in 2023. The accompanying flight report describes the UAP flying near the ocean surface and making several 90-degree turns at a speed of approximately 80 miles per hour. Let's see. To be honest, nothing makes sense here. It's just a dot flying. What is it? A rocket? A drone? And the most interesting part is this specific turn that is supposed to seem strange. You can't even see the object here. It's unclear whether it turned or how it turned. And once again, all the data is redacted. Moving on, a 24-second recording made by an infrared sensor aboard a US military platform. Same thing. It is described as a small and round object flying near the ocean surface toward land. Again, some dot is flying and then disappears near the surface. Completely unclear once more. But so far, it looks like some kind of drone or rocket. Next up, a 21-second video recording. It's described as consisting of an object with a vertical post or crossbar attached to its lower section. The observer also reported that the UAP might be a reflection of an object in the water. Well, this time it's a bit clearer. Still a dot, still nothing makes sense. It actually looks like a reflection in the water, just as written. Maybe it's a watercraft, maybe it's some kind of torpedo, or if it's very close to the water, it looks like a cruise missile, which usually flies very low, like the American Tomahawks with that kind of wing, or crossbar, as specified here. Moving on, a 10-second video recording made by an infrared sensor aboard a US military platform in 2024. I can't even try to make anything out here. It looks like the pixels just fell apart. You can't see a thing. Nothing is visible. Nothing makes sense. The data is redacted. Another dot. This time, right in the middle of a wind farm. Now this is truly bizarre. A dot is flying right between the wind turbines, but it's hard to describe it as anything other than camera lens flare. And the strangest part is this turnaround. It reversed direction and flew right back. I have no absolute idea moving forward. A deformed and irregular white sphere. Here, I couldn't even tell if this thing is the object or just a file defect. Where exactly is the white sphere? There's just some bright shape here. You know, after seeing all of this, you have to ask yourself, why did they even upload this? And we can find the answer right on the main page at the very beginning of this exact website. A statement from Donald Trump. Trump promised to release UFO-related documents, just like the Epstein documents. Frankly, he promised a lot of things. This policy of his seems targeted squarely at conspiracy theorists, his core audience. Hence this beautiful website, I'm not afraid to use that word, that makes you feel like you're in a video game. Hence the literal appeal to the public. Try doing your own research. The War Department welcomes private sector involvement, analysis, information, and expertise. In other words, the Pentagon couldn't figure out what was in the video, so it cut out small snippets of the footage, redacted all the information, and said, "Maybe now you'll understand." Here's how it looks in my head. Trump came up with yet another brilliant populist idea. A loud headline: "I will tell the world the truth." He's going to reveal secret documents about UFOs. So he gives the order to his people, whoever handles those kinds of tasks, and they build a dedicated tab on the Ministry of Defense website. And what do we find inside? Apollo documents that have already been public for decades. Snippets of video, 1 minute or 10-second clips, deliberately cropped with all data blacked out. It's as if their goal was to find videos where you absolutely cannot tell what is flying, and they achieved exactly that. People get mysterious videos and never mind that you can literally see the outline of a parachute in one of them. Trump gets the image he was chasing. I am revealing what the Democrats hid from you. My policy is a policy of transparency. We publish all secret documents. We fear nothing. Trump is confidently capitalizing on people's distrust of the government, even though he runs that very government himself. His ratings go up. The electorate stops thinking about real problems, like a war in Iran, for example, and starts studying flying saucers. UFOs, you see, transitioned from a conspiracy theory into a political tool a long time ago. And this gorgeous Department of Defense website is direct proof of that. And I must say, the Apollo lunar program itself was entirely driven by politics. Flying to the moon was a product of the Cold War. Kennedy set the goal of landing Americans on the moon specifically to win the standoff against the Soviet Union. And once the Americans got what they wanted, the scientific programs were quickly wrapped up and NASA's funding was slashed. The political necessity to fly vanished, and nobody wanted to spend money on pure science. And you can't really blame the politicians. They play by rules dictated by human nature. People want a spectacle. The first moon landing was pure euphoria for an entire nation, breaking broadcast viewership records. The second landing was watched by half as many people. And with each subsequent trip, Americans only asked, "Why are they showing us this? We've already seen it." Those flights just didn't trigger the same emotions anymore. And here lies the modern analogy. After all, we are going back to the moon. The new space program is called Artemis. A great name, by the way. The first astronauts have already completed a test flight orbiting the moon. The US is ramping up its cosmic might again, this time with the help of private programs too. Meanwhile, China is developing its own lunar program, which means there is a renewed need to be first. You know, the entire space program feels like a reflection of a rather raw human essence, a human nature that hasn't changed for thousands of years. We are still trying to argue over who is stronger, trying to climb onto a higher branch, trying to grab a bigger piece of the prey to live more comfortably. Only now, it's happening on the scale of entire nations, and fighting this seems completely pointless. All that's left for us is to be glad that while politicians are busy trying to climb higher, scientists keep doing their work. And they're the ones who will definitely figure out what's going on with the moon, and they will definitely make our lives better.